No one moved. No one spoke. 50 billion lives were gone, and the galaxy chose silence. But on a small, violent world called Earth, someone stood up. The galactic emergency beacon had been echoing for 13 days. It was not just a signal. It was a cry for survival. Across the spiral arm of the galaxy, entire systems had gone dark. Trade routes stopped transmitting. Colonies vanished. Dyson relays became empty shells. The thing responsible did not conquer planets. It erased them. Inside the massive council sphere above the world of Lythera, thousands of alien delegates watched the projection in horror. The hologram displayed System KX-991 before and after contact. Before, blue oceans, shining cities, orbital rings. After, grey dust and drifting debris. No biological matter detected. No artificial structures remaining. Total molecular breakdown. Professor Kale of the Thren species adjusted his biolens. His species had survived 3 extinction events on their homeworld. They were not easily frightened. But even his voice trembled. "It does not destroy," he said quietly. "It consumes at the atomic level." A murmur spread through the chamber. The entity had no visible ships. No energy signatures. It moved like a shadow across space, attaching itself to complex life systems. The more advanced the civilization, the faster it fed. Military response fleets had already tried. Plasma bombardment only accelerated its growth. Antimatter charges became fuel. It learned. It adapted. It advanced. "The outer colonies will fall within 16 cycles," announced strategist Vorel. "Core systems within 1 standard year." Silence followed. Then the High Chancellor asked the question that mattered. "Who will respond?" The chamber dimmed. No one volunteered. The crystalline beings of Sailari could not survive exposure. The aquatic Hellions required controlled atmospheres. The synthetic Raltech calculated a 98.7% casualty probability. Even the war-born Dravok shook their armored heads. "This is not an enemy," their warlord growled. "It is oblivion." Hours passed. Excuses filled the air. Retreat. Evacuation. Containment. None were realistic. Then the communication grid flashed. Unknown transmission detected. Origin. Sol system. A ripple of discomfort moved through the council. Sol. The death world. Every species knew about Earth. A planet of violent storms. Unstable tectonics. Extreme temperatures. Aggressive fauna. Toxic flora. Microbial ecosystems so hostile they rewrote biology constantly. The official classification. Category 9 Hazard World. Civilization development, statistically improbable. The screen flickered. A human appeared. Dark hair pulled back. Uniform worn but practical. Eyes steady. "This is Admiral Arjun Rao of the United Terran Defense Fleet," he said calmly. "We received your emergency signal." The chamber whispered. The Chancellor leaned forward. "You understand the scale of this threat?" "Yes," Rao replied. "We studied your data. We are mobilizing." A stunned pause followed. Professor Kale blinked. "Mobilizing, for what?" "To engage." "You cannot," strategist Vorel interrupted. "The entity dissolves matter itself. Entire armadas failed." Rao did not raise his voice. "Then you used the wrong approach." The words landed like gravity. "You believe you can succeed where civilizations millions of years old have failed?" the Chancellor asked carefully. Rao allowed a faint smile. "On Earth," he said, "we deal with extinction events before breakfast." Transmission ended. The chamber exploded in overlapping voices. Madness. Arrogance. Suicide. But 72 hours later, something unprecedented happened. Human ships arrived. Not elegant. Not beautiful. They were thick-hulled. Reinforced. Covered in external modules. Their surfaces carried signs of wear, repair, and modification. They looked used. More ships followed. Cargo carriers. Medical vessels. Engineering platforms. Scientific cruisers. Heavy defense frigates. Within 5 days, the Terran fleet counted 312 vessels. Ambassador Yelth of the Sailari observed from a safe distance. They prepare as if for environmental disaster response, she noted. Inside the flagship TDS Horizon Breaker, Admiral RAO stood with his command staff. Dr. Mai Alvarez, chief xenobiologist, projected rotating models of the entity. It behaves like a hyper-evolved fungal macroorganism, she explained. Spore dispersal patterns match invasive species outbreaks we've contained before. Scale difference? Asked Commander Idris Okonkwo. Planetary instead of continental, Mai replied calmly. No panic. Only problem-solving. Colonel Sofia Markovich of Terran Ground Response leaned against the holotable. My units trained in Antarctic biohazards, Amazonian parasite zones, and deep-sea toxic vents. We treat this like advanced contamination. Idris crossed his arms. It dissolves starship alloys. Mai nodded. But it reacts aggressively to sterile uniformity. Clean energy signatures. Predictable chemistry. RAO understood immediately. And we are neither clean nor predictable. A faint grin spread through the room. Human technology was rarely sterile. Ships carried microbial ecosystems. Crew environments were biologically diverse. Earth metals contained impurities. Terran engineering favored redundancy and layered complexity. They were messy, alive, adaptive. Probe drones entered the infected zone. Unlike alien probes, they did not immediately disintegrate. Data streamed back. The entity hesitates, Mai whispered. It's analyzing. On Lythera, Council observers stared in disbelief. How are their machines surviving? Vorel demanded. Professor Kale enlarged the feed. Because they are not machines alone, he said slowly. They are ecosystems. Back aboard the Horizon Breaker, alarms pulsed. Entity mass approaching outer perimeter. Through reinforced observation glass, crew members saw it for the first time. It did not look like a monster. It looked like fog. Dark, shifting fog filled with microscopic filaments of silver light. It moved like a living storm across the ruined planet below. Beautiful, whispered a young ensign. Deadly, Markovich corrected. RAO gave the order. Phase 1. Cargo bays opened. Thousands of atmospheric drones deployed, releasing tailored microbial payloads. Not weapons. Competitors. Engineered bacteria designed to consume similar energy pathways. Viral disruptors targeting replication coding. Chemical interference agents mimicking Earth's own ecological warfare systems. On Earth, life survived by fighting constantly. Predator versus prey. Virus versus immune cell. Fungus versus antibiotic mold. Humanity had studied that war for thousands of years. Now they brought it to space. The fog reacted violently. Filaments lashed outward, dissolving several drones. But others survived long enough to deploy. Doctor, Mai monitored readings. It's slowing. Council observers gasped. For the first time since the crisis began, the entity's expansion rate decreased by 0.03%. Tiny, but measurable. RAO exhaled. Good. It can bleed. The fog thickened and surged upward toward the Terran fleet. Energy spike incoming. Idris shouted. RAO's voice remained steady. Activate layered chaos protocol. Human ships powered irregularly. Instead of synchronized shields, each vessel shifted frequencies randomly. Thermal signatures fluctuated. Radiation output spiked and dipped unpredictably. To the entity, it was not a clean target. It was confusion. The fog touched the outermost frigate. Hull plating began to erode. Then stopped. Terran composite alloys were infused with reactive biological agents. When molecular breakdown began, counterreactions triggered automatically. Earth materials fought back. On Lythera, Silence fell. The impossible was happening. The entity, destroyer of civilizations, was being challenged. Not by superior power, but by stubborn, chaotic resilience. Inside the horizon breaker, Rao watched the battle unfold. He did not smile. He knew this was only the beginning. Because on Earth, the first wave was never the worst. And somewhere inside that dark cosmic storm, the entity was learning. And so were the humans. The war for existence had just begun. The fog did not retreat. It changed. Within hours of the first microbial deployment, the dark mass surrounding the dead planet began to pulse with strange light. Silver filaments tightened into thicker strands. Energy readings spiked and dropped in irregular waves. Inside the horizon breaker, Dr. May Alvarez stared at the new data with growing intensity. "It's adapting," she said quietly. "It's rewriting itself." On the main screen, the fog condensed into sharper structures. Where before it had drifted like a storm, now it moved with direction. "It's targeting our microbial agents," Commander Idris observed. Colonel Markovich crossed her arms. "Good. That means it sees them as a threat." Admiral Rao remained still, watching carefully. "Every predator learns when it meets resistance," he said. "The question is, how fast?" The answer came sooner than anyone wanted. A second wave of fog surged upward, faster than before. It struck a Terran supply carrier at the edge of formation. Hull integrity alarms screamed. "Molecular degradation accelerating," an officer shouted. The outer plating dissolved in shimmering layers. But the humans were ready. "Deploy counterbiotics," May ordered. From within the damaged hull, automated systems released aerosolized nanoorganisms. Designed in underground labs beneath Earth's Sahara biocontainment facility, these organisms thrived in extreme radiation and chemical chaos. They attacked the fog's filaments directly. For a moment, space around the ship glowed bright blue as competing reactions erupted. Then, the fog recoiled. Cheers erupted across the bridge. It pulled back. Idris exclaimed. But Rao did not celebrate. "Status of the carrier." 37% structural loss, came the reply. "Crew evacuated successfully." Markovich nodded with approval. They held long enough. The ship was sacrificed. But the line did not break. Far away, in the safety of the Council sphere, alien observers struggled to process what they were seeing. "They are fighting inside the infection," Ambassador Yelth whispered. Professor Kale magnified the feed. "No," he corrected softly. "They are infecting the infection." Back near the ruined planet, Terran scientists adjusted their strategy. The first wave had slowed expansion by 3%. Not enough. Dr. May brought up simulations. "The entity centralizes processing in dense clusters," she explained. "Those nodes coordinate growth." "Like a brain?" Idris asked. "More like a hive," she replied. "Distributed, but with priority centers." Rao nodded once. "Then we don't fight the storm. We disrupt the hive." Within hours, specialized strike drones launched toward the densest fog formations. Unlike earlier probes, these drones carried experimental payloads. Genetic chaos. On Earth, life survived through mutation. Viruses mutated. Bacteria adapted. Immune systems evolved. Human scientists had weaponized controlled mutation during past pandemics to outpace deadly outbreaks. Now they applied that knowledge on a cosmic scale. As drones penetrated the fog, they released rapid evolution viral constructs. Not designed to kill instantly. Designed to confuse replication instructions. Inside the fog, energy patterns flickered wildly. For the first time, the entity's expansion paused completely. Then something unexpected happened. The fog lashed outward, not randomly, but directly toward the horizon breaker. "It's targeting command," someone yelled. Rao did not hesitate. Full power to layered chaos. Execute pattern Omega. The flagship systems shifted into maximum irregularity. Engines flared unpredictably. Shield harmonics scrambled. But the fog did not slow. It was learning to anticipate unpredictability. A filament struck the ship's forward section. Metal screamed. Internal compartments depressurized. Markovich grabbed a railing as gravity fluctuated. Boarding teams to breach zones, she ordered. Seal and purge. This was new. The fog was no longer just consuming externally. It was attempting infiltration. Inside damaged corridors, emergency lights flashed red. Crew members in sealed combat environment suits advanced carefully. They faced not monsters, but creeping silver growth spreading along walls and floors. Private Lucas Harville triggered his suit's microflamethrower attachment. The fog recoiled from the intense heat. Thermal sensitivity confirmed, he shouted. Behind him, Sergeant Amorad Lamini deployed a chemical foam used in industrial oil fires. Where foam touched silver filaments, reactions sparked violently. It bleeds when stressed, she yelled back. On the bridge, my processed new readings. It doesn't like chaotic energy inputs, rapid temperature shifts, radiation bursts, chemical inconsistency. RAO's eyes sharpened. Because it evolved in sterile systems, he realized. High-efficiency civilizations. Predictable environments. Earth was none of those things. Prepare the planet breaker package, RAO ordered calmly. Idris hesitated. Sir, that's untested. So was fire, RAO replied. Below them, the ruined world rotated slowly. Once green. Now grey. The entity covered 80% of its surface. Terran engineering ships moved into position, deploying massive atmospheric processors. Markovich returned to the bridge, helmet removed, sweat on her brow. Infiltration contained, she reported. It's aggressive, but it can be burned. RAO nodded once. Good. Because now we burn everything. On Lythera, the council watched in tense silence. What are they doing? Vorel asked. Professor Kale zoomed in on atmospheric readings. They are destabilizing the planet. Terran ships ignited orbital thrusters, increasing planetary rotation artificially. Simultaneously, seismic induction devices triggered tectonic instability. The dead world began to shake. Massive fault lines cracked open. Volcanic eruptions erupted across continents. The fog rippled violently. It feeds on stable matter, Mai explained. So we remove stability. Superheated lava flooded infected zones. Radiation from induced magnetic storms disrupted energy cohesion. Chemical clouds filled the sky. It looked like apocalypse. But to humans, it looked like home. Entity density dropping by 12%. Idris shouted. For the first time, the fog's mass visibly shrank. But victory was not clean. 3 Terran ships were lost in the chaos. Hundreds of personnel sacrificed themselves holding containment lines. The fog gathered one final time, compressing into a massive central vortex above the planet's equator. It's concentrating, Mai warned. Last defense. The vortex launched upward like a spear toward the fleet. RAO stood tall. Final phase. From hidden compartments within engineering ships, a device activated. Not a bomb. A seed. The Genesis engine. Designed originally to terraform dead planets, it carried Earth's most aggressive ecological blueprint, layered microbial ecosystems capable of surviving volcanic hellscapes. The engine detonated within the vortex. Instead of explosion, a wave of green energy rippled outward. Spores. Bacteria. Extremophile life forms. For a brief, breathtaking moment, space around the dead planet shimmered with microscopic life. The vortex convulsed. Silver filaments shattered. The fog collapsed inward, unable to compete against billions of adaptive organisms fighting for territory. And then, silence. Energy readings dropped to 0. The grey surface of the planet remained scarred and burning, but no longer consumed. On the horizon breaker, no one spoke for several seconds. Then Idris whispered, "It's gone." On Lythera, the council chamber stood frozen. The unstoppable force. Stopped. Not by ancient empires. Not by perfect technology. But by a species born on a violent, unstable world that never expected the universe to be safe. Admiral Ario exhaled slowly. "Begin planetary recovery protocols," he said quietly. Behind him, Earth's flag shimmered against the stars. The galaxy had feared extinction. Instead, it had witnessed something else. The storm had learned something new. And for the first time in its existence, it had learned fear. For the first time in weeks, the galaxy was quiet. No new systems went dark. No emergency beacons screamed through subspace. No colonies vanished into grey dust. Above the scarred world of KX-991, the Terran fleet drifted carefully, scanning every particle of space. Dr. May Alvarez stood at the center of the Horizon Breaker's lab deck, staring at floating data streams. "Zero replication activity," she confirmed softly. "No energy spikes. No adaptive signals." Commander Idris leaned back in his chair. "So it's really over?" Mai hesitated. "It's contained," she corrected. "Destroyed? Maybe. But evolution never truly ends." Admiral Arjun Ario stepped onto the bridge, his uniform still marked from days without rest. He looked older than when the mission began, but his eyes were steady. "Status report," he said calmly. "Planetary biosphere beginning slow regeneration," Mai replied. "The Genesis engine seeded extremophiles successfully. Over time, natural ecosystems may re-emerge." "And the entity?" She met his gaze. Nothing left to measure. A long breath moved through the room. Not celebration. Relief. Outside the viewport, the planet no longer looked like a graveyard. Volcanic clouds still swirled. Lava still flowed. But patches of faint green shimmered across the surface, microscopic life reclaiming territory. Human life. On Lythera, the Galactic Council chamber was full again. But this time, the silence felt different. Not fear. Reflection. Professor Kale addressed the assembly. "The Terrans succeeded where we calculated impossibility." Strategist Vorel folded his hands. "They used chaos as a weapon." Ambassador Yeltha's crystalline body glowed faintly. "They used experience." The Chancellor stood slowly. "For centuries, we believed advancement meant control. Sterility. Perfection. Predictability." The hologram of Earth appeared in the center of the chamber. Blue oceans. White storms. Brown continents scarred by tectonic lines. "A world of instability," the Chancellor continued. "A world we classified as hostile to intelligent life." A pause. And yet, that hostility created resilience. Across the galaxy, transmissions spread. The humans had not only survived the entity, they had studied it, adapted to it, broken it. Back aboard the Horizon Breaker, repair crews worked steadily. Hull sections were replaced. Systems recalibrated. In the medical wing, Sergeant Amorad Lamini sat quietly as a nurse sealed the final cut on her arm. "You'll have a scar," the nurse said gently. Amora smiled faintly. "Good," she replied. "Reminds me I was there." In engineering, Chief Malik Tanaka oversaw reconstruction of the supply carrier that had nearly been consumed. "Reinforce the outer hull with reactive biomesh," he instructed. "If something like that ever shows up again, we want it to regret touching us." He spoke casually, as if planning for the weather. That was the difference. To the galaxy, the entity had been an unstoppable cosmic horror. To humanity, it had been a problem. And problems were meant to be solved. 3 days later, a message arrived from the Galactic Council requesting formal audience. Admiral Areo appeared before the chamber once more. But this time, the atmosphere had changed. No whispers of madness. No accusations of arrogance. Only quiet respect. The Chancellor inclined his head, a gesture rarely offered to younger species. "Admiral Areo," he began, "you have altered the course of our civilization." Areo shook his head slightly. "We responded to a distress call. Anyone would have done the same." A ripple of uncomfortable movement spread across the chamber. No one else had. Professor Kale spoke carefully. "Why?" he asked. "You had no alliances with the fallen colonies. No obligation." RAO considered the question. On the bridge behind him, Terran officers moved with quiet efficiency. "On Earth," he said slowly, "life survives by cooperation as much as competition. We fight storms. We fight disease. We fight each other sometimes. But when extinction shows up..." He paused. "We stand together." The Chancellor studied him. "You do not fear extinction." RAO allowed himself a small smile. "We've faced it before. Ice ages. Asteroid impacts. Plagues. World wars. Nuclear standoffs." He leaned forward slightly. "Fear is natural. But surrender isn't." Silence followed. Then Ambassador Yelth spoke. "Your world is unstable. Dangerous. Violent." "Yes," RAO agreed. "And yet," she continued, "that danger made you adaptable." RAO nodded once. "Earth never promised safety. So we stopped expecting it." The council chamber glowed brighter. A decision was forming. The Chancellor raised his staff. "From this day forward, the Terran Union will hold permanent advisory status within the Galactic Council." Gasps echoed. That privilege had never been granted to a species so young. But the Chancellor was not finished. "We also request partnership. Teach us what you know about resilience. About biological warfare management. About surviving chaos." RAO looked surprised for the first time. "You want to learn from a death world?" The Chancellor's eyes softened. "Perhaps we should have done so sooner." Across the galaxy, attitudes began to shift. Sterile megacities introduced controlled ecological diversity. Military academies studied Earth's disaster response doctrine. Scientific institutes re-examined the value of microbial ecosystems. The definition of advanced changed. Meanwhile, on Earth, the news spread quickly. Not with triumph, but with quiet pride. Children watched holovids of Terran ships standing against the dark fog. Students studied footage of Genesis engines blooming life in space. Scientists began designing improved adaptive defenses, not because war was expected, but because curiosity never stopped. Weeks later, a deep space probe detected faint energy ripples far beyond mapped sectors. Not the same as before, but similar. When the report reached Admiral RAO, he did not sigh in frustration. He smiled slightly. "Send exploration teams," he ordered. "And double the microbial labs." Commander Idris raised an eyebrow. "Already preparing for round 2. RAO looked out at the stars. "Life doesn't stop evolving," he said. "Neither do we." On Lythera, Professor Kale reviewed the same report. For the first time, he did not feel dread. He felt something else. Hope. Because somewhere in the galaxy, on a storm-ridden planet filled with earthquakes and oceans and relentless competition, lived a species that did not see monsters in the dark. They saw puzzles. They saw challenges. They saw opportunities to learn. And if the universe ever screamed for help again, if another shadow rose between the stars, the galaxy now knew something important. Someone would answer. Not because they were the strongest. Not because they were the oldest. But because they were human. And humanity had learned long ago that survival is not about perfection. It is about adaptation. It is about courage. It is about standing up when everyone else sits down. The stars burned quietly above. The storm had come. The storm had fallen. And the galaxy would never look at Earth the same way again. But somewhere, deep in the endless dark, something else was watching. And this time, it was cautious.